report suggests that conservative cities are better than progressive cities at closing the white-black educational achievement gap. The only surprise here is that the study's author actually literally cannot figure out why this might be. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Common Sense Dr. Duke Show. Hello, amigos, a little French and Spanish, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today we're talking about more than 50 California grad students who demanded higher pay from the university and got fired. Plus, former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, blasts leftist college professors for pushing their political agenda in the classroom, and Joe Biden seems to be a real snore for leftist college students. He just needs a tattoo. But we start with new findings showing that despite the left's constant claims that the right is to blame for racial inequality, schools in conservative cities, palpably conservative cities, are actually the ones closing the learning gap between blacks and whites. And I go back to my teaser. You read this written by a liberal, right? Here's the liberal causes achievement gaps. Liberalism causes achievement gaps. You got there a nice little chart. And so what I love about the author is how utterly and thoroughly bemused he is in his broad study. The study, by the way, is called How America's Most Progressive Cities Betray Their Commitment to Educational Opportunity at All. And it's by Brightbeam, right? And again, I couldn't get past the opening where it was like, we don't know why this is happening. Can I give you one attitude? Can I give you one little piece of help, my little friendly liberal author? It's because in conservative cities, they still teach things, not ideologies. Could that have anything to do with it, Katie?
No, none in the least. I don't think it has anything to do with it. But I do, in fact, enjoy that they finally are shedding some light on this to everything that we've been saying for years and years. And the fact that they call it the secret shame. It shouldn't be secret and it shouldn't be shameful because it shouldn't be happening at all. What we should have happening is that kids, regardless of their skin color, should be getting a good education. But as we know, this is not happening. And why Brightbeam did this, they specifically looked at, in Minnesota, at Minneapolis. And they saw that this is where the racial divide, the inequality was highest. I mean, they're talking 53% difference between a white kid getting a reading education and a black kid getting a reading education or lack thereof.
And that's because, can I be very blunt about Minnesota?
Yes, you can.
One of those states.
Oh, yeah.
It's because you have huge swaths, 90% of that state is nothing but rural townships, right? 90% of that is rural. And where are the minorities that have been imported for the sake of let's feel good diversity? Where do they live?
Minneapolis.
In Minneapolis, right, in the major cities.
And St. Paul.
And by the way, I wonder if you filtered out all the rest of Minnesota except Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then did those same gaps. I'll bet you any money you would find a much more closer correlation. You've destroyed education in Minneapolis, so you're going to find that the white kids have plummeted more and the black kids have risen, or even if they stay the same, that the gap has closed. That's all this is. And file this story under the progressivism ruins everything category, which is getting alarmingly long.
Well, and we've said this before about just major cities across the whole United States. Take a look at any state. Take even California, crazy California. If you take out the major cities, you take out LA and San Fran and all that, and you look at what is the more, I guess, rural living in California, you're going to see that achievement gap is much smaller as well.
Thank you, Obama, because thank you, Common Core, Obama, Bill Gates, thank you, Jeb Bush, educrats. You've told minority students they're victims, number one. You've told them that the systems are institutionally biased against them. So when they don't work very hard, that's not their fault, it's the system's fault. And then you told them disparate impact, right? You can't discipline, you can't have rules for minority kids, because to ask them to do this is disparate impact. You can't throw out kids who are causing trouble in the classroom if they happen to be minorities. You got to keep them in the classroom there. Then you've gotten rid of the ability of high-achieving kids, including potentially high-achieving minority kids, from moving ahead. You've killed that now, and you've forced all the kids to be in the same grade level. And then you've imported this ridiculous pedagogy and curriculum from Common Core and allied sources, which aren't really interested in really high-achieving students. They're interested in leveling the playing field. The very thing you progressives say you want, high achievement for African Americans and minorities, you've destroyed it by creating an educational situation that levels out achievement. Even if you have high-performing blacks, they're getting crushed like high-performing whites in the name of equity and parity.
Well, and on top of that, the kids who want to learn, the ones like
That's
you're
right.
saying who actually want to learn are being victimized, actual victimization by this, as well as all of the other kids in the classroom.
right.
So it's every kid is getting affected by this. And just like you said, they are not taught that they have any agency, that everything that happens
They're
they're
victims.
victims
They're
of
passive, yeah.
everything. They can't have any agency. And that discipline, we've done how many stories where it's a minority student attacks a teacher or something, or students attack one another, but we never discuss, or what the other part they don't discuss is the fact that the kids who are in the classroom, how they're affected, the ones who aren't even a part of it.
It's a great
and
idea.
they're losing out their opportunity to get
You
education.
made a fantastic point I hadn't considered. How often in the 2-year run of this show have we had a single episode where a white kid attacked a teacher? A single episode. I can't think of any.
No, I'd have to go back in my
I can't think
Rolodex,
of any.
And I can't think of
and
any.
every time we get into these stories, it's always. And here's the other thing. Heaven forbid you point out the fact that single parent homes are much likely to produce kids who struggle in school. Right? And when you think about the degree to which African American families, particularly in cities, live with single mother families, and we can't talk about this, right? You're not allowed to say that. That can't be a factor in any of this. You think it doesn't? You think a single mother trying to work and raise kids? You think that doesn't impact discipline issues? You think that doesn't impact time and security issues?
Mm-hmm.
So we're back to this again, right? And where we go with this is this idea that, and let's be clear, so-called conservative cities aren't exactly getting it right. It's not like they're educating kids at a high level. They participate in the same crappy public school system with the same crappy public school initiatives and the same crappy public school teacher training. So it's not much better, but it's better. And the reason it's better is because I would imagine that in conservative hotbeds, you have more people who are intrinsically conservative, more teachers, right? That may have imbibed the public school rhetoric, but can get around some of it. Whereas if you're teaching in Los Angeles, you better be a screaming liberal or you're not going to last very long. That's the whole difference right there.
Well, because in those cities, it's not about the actual education, it's about the politics. And we have politics happening in the great state of California, where at the University of California, Santa Cruz, they recently fired 54 of their graduate students who refused to turn in final fall grades. And the students have been doing this whole long bitter diatribe of an ongoing strike for higher wages. Now, Lori G. Kletzer, this is the school's interim campus provost and executive vice chancellor, said, "It's extremely disappointing to us that we have to take such a drastic step, but we ultimately cannot retain graduate students as teaching assistants who will not fulfill their responsibilities."
I'm so torn.
I know.
I'm so, right? I love you. I honestly love you. Right? The Olivia Newton-John song about being in love with the two. This is my story. This is
it.
I love you. I honestly love you story because on the one hand, it is hysterical to see graduate students trying to flex their one scrawny, nerdy muscle and get canned. That's beautiful. But the other side of the story is the same administrators who fired them are the same administrators who would 100% support the Red for Ed movement, right?
This is true.
Where public high school teachers can walk out on schools, literally leave no one in the classroom. These are the same liberal progressives who absolutely triumph when that happens, right? Stick it to the man, you high school teachers. Now it's because these universities are having to suffer themselves from that kind of policy that they went ahead and fired the kids. Which one do I pick?
Which one? I don't know.
I love this and I love that. How do I decide?
Or is it I hate this and I hate that?
Katie,
So
how do I
don't-
decide?
You don't have to. It's 2020.
Can I laugh at all of it? It's pathetic. I mean, so again, if you had to ask me where I come down on ultimately, if I had to pick what, I think my glee at these idiot graduate students who, let's be very clear what they are. They're professional students, right?
Yes, they are.
They get stipends. They get to teach a little bit. Now, I was a graduate. I was a teaching graduate assistant.
Was I.
You were too. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough to survive on.
And I go back to how I got paid way less than even the doctoral students for teaching a full class, but I digress. The thing is, I am completely on the side of the administration in this case because I looked up how much these kids are making. Let's backtrack. The reason
They're not kids.
The reason they are actually they started withholding the grades back in December, and about 200 students actually had started to do this, is because they wanted their increase in pay of $1,412 so that this would cover rent near the school. You live in Santa Cruz.
Right.
It's going to be pricey. You knew this going in. But back to how much they actually make. So they want $1,400 more dollars, but they already, as a TA, make $43,823.
That's shocking.
I looked in the thing.
That is
a teaching
shocking.
fellow makes $51,000. A grad student who's a researcher makes $41,000. And there are steps on that one. So you can make all the way up to step 10, which is $81,000.
It's amazing.
These are grad students. My tuition was covered, and I got a little stipend. I was happy as a clam.
My tuition, and that 20, probably 15 years before you, my tuition was covered. And I taught 3 classes a semester, and I think I made about $14,000.
I made 9.
Right. And so how many did you teach?
It was one full
Just
class.
one, yeah. So, I mean, you can think about how this has gone. And here's another point for me. I would be willing to bet that the universities would provide dorm room for these kids, but they don't want it. These I keep calling them kids. These are graduate students, oftentimes in their 30s. Most of these kids are in their 30s.
That is true.
They're not
Or
children.
Late 20s.
Late 20s, right.
Yeah.
They're not kids. I'm sure the universities would give them a dorm room if they didn't see it as beneath them, right?
I totally would have taken it.
Right, absolutely. So,
time,
I'm with you. I'm much more sympathetic to the university on this, although the hypocrisy of the university is something. What would the university say about a local high school in Santa Cruz that fired all of its teachers? Because they walked out for higher pay. You know where that would go, okay? So 6 degrees of progressive hypocrisy.
And of course, you know, the one and only Bernard Sanders joined in and tweeted out that this is disgraceful. All workers deserve the right to bargain and strike for better wages and benefits. And to Janet Napolitano, who's the president, stop this outrageous union busting and negotiate in good faith.
Wait. Napolitano, really?
Napolitano. He called her
and
out.
she's on the side of the students, right?
No, she's actually saying they're saying
she's the union.
Neutral.
She's the union boss.
Yeah, but the union actually didn't authorize this, so that's why. That's why they're all
Interesting. This is one of those stories where the Schadenfreude is high. That's all I can say.
Well, speaking of potential presidential candidates, maybe 2024, we have Nikki Haley, who's the former UN ambassador and South Carolina governor. She spoke at the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C. recently, and in her talk, she actually spoke about the biases of the colleges today and basically how they veered from traditional purposes of what, being in college was, about how teaching students how to think instead of what to think. So let's listen to what she has to say.
And there was just a study that UNC did, and I think it found 67% of students found themselves censoring themselves. And when they're so fearful to speak out because it will hurt their grade or they'll be ostracized within their classes, you've got a real problem. Colleges and universities are there to allow people to figure out who they are.
Yeah, and I applaud what she said, although I find 67% to be low. I teach at a kind of a blue-collar university, right, in the middle of the most blue-collar part of Wisconsin, right? So this is not the part where my university is not a wealthy liberal enclave like Madison or Milwaukee. And I ask my kids every semester without fail, you've seen me do it, raise your hand if you've ever had to write a paper you didn't believe in to protect your grade. Every single hand goes up. It's much higher than 67%. And the other thing so she's right on, I don't know that the number is high enough. And the other thing I would simply say, as much as I like Nikki Haley and she's right to call this off, and we need more people calling this out, is I'm not sure the college is the place where you're supposed to find yourself. Do you really want university administrators and professors in charge of helping you find out who you are, Katie? What you're saying is that the primary purpose of the universities is social engineering. And then you wonder why you got an entire university program that is social justice over real learning for most kids.
Well, she also says you're there to teach. Let the students decide where they fall. Except our professors just ignore that they're there to teach, and they just think, I get to decide where the students fall.
And if you're there to teach, that means teach the subject.
Oh, the subject.
It doesn't mean teach psychological mumbo jumbo to help kids find themselves, right? I would be happy if they could find the lowest common denominator. I would be happy if they could find the thesis in a paragraph of critical writing. I would be happy if they could find the main point of a Shakespeare sonnet. I don't give a rat's ass about how comfortable they are in their own skin or how they're questioning their sexuality by intersectionalism. Don't care. Don't care.
All right, well, we're going to go over to the boring man known as Joe Biden. Poor Joe Biden. He's struggling just a little bit. But so are the students in basically trying to find out any of his accomplishments.
Why does Biden not excite you? oh, he's old, and like just like watching him speak, he can't like string together a coherent sentence.
And a lot of things he says are kind of confusing, which kind of make me nervous about him like as a president.
I think he's been in politics for too long, and I think we need somebody who's fresh and new and just ready and excited to...
Anybody over Trump at this point, but I cannot say that I can get excited about another old white man.
So on the most liberal campuses in America, they don't like Joe Biden because they're ageist. Did they not learn in their intersectionality class that disliking people because of their age is bad? Did they not learn that?
But they forgot that Joe's a male.
And white.
And white. And he
and
can't
what's
even
so
say a
depressing about
sentence.
that, Katie, is that every reason given was a politically incorrect one, right?
This is true.
They're judging him on his race, they're judging him on his gender, and they're judging him on his age. You said something before the show that's exactly right, that if that were Bernie Sanders they were asking about, they'd be excited. Despite the fact that he's older than Joe Biden, despite the fact that he's whiter than Joe Biden, and despite the fact that he's a lunatic male, right?
And he's been in politics just as long.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or if they had chosen Elizabeth Warren, right?
Oh, no.
Her femaleness would have been the only redeeming factor for her. But do you see how racist these kids are? Do you see how studiously indoctrinated on college liberalism they are? They are incapable of thinking outside the box, right? So the idea that you would consider anybody who's not a Democrat is off the table. I promise you, if Nikki Haley, right, Indian American female, was on the Republican ticket, they would not even consider voting for her. I guarantee you, if Clarence Thomas or Walter Williams,
they don't know who that is.
You know what? You get my
Yes,
point,
I
though, right? You
understand.
could have the most conservative person who checked all the minority boxes, and if they were a Republican, they still wouldn't consider voting for them.
Exactly.
And so, again, right, the ageism is palpable here. What would their professors say if this was being done? We keep hearing how Elizabeth Warren says that she lost because of sexism. Hillary Clinton is still saying she lost because of... Okay, what if their professors heard that their students were attacking a candidate for the Democratic nomination because of gender and age? They would immediately, the professors, leap to the idea that they were going after Warren. But because they're going after Republicans, it's so reflexive with these kids that they don't even know they're engaging in the very same kind of bias they accuse everybody else of.
And they make an ass out of you and me.
Ass out of you and me.
Assume. Yeah, I just want to give credit, as always, to Campus Reform's Eduardo Noret, because he takes the bullet on all of these and he goes around to the campuses. This was actually at American University in Washington, D.C. I was going to go there for grad school, and I'm just so happy I did not, because wow.
And you know, this is the other thing. A lot of because Eduardo can't be flying all across the country, right? So
True.
most of all of these interviews on campus tend to emanate from where the kids
DC
live,
area.
in California
Yep.
or the D.C. area, or in New York, or the three places they come from. And you see how much more radical that is. You wonder at the University of Kansas or at the University of Michigan State. You wonder would it be say? I unfortunately think it would be the same, but it would be interesting to see from other schools or some schools in the South. Would they say the same thing at Clemson or at Louisiana State?
That I think would be interesting to see the schools in the South, but I know that if we would just travel on down to Madison, they call us basically
we know what they'd say.
We're the California of the Midwest, so that's unfortunate. But we're done for the day, and you can be too. If you like the show, please help us keep others educated by sharing this episode with your family and friends on all of our platforms, be it Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Parler, so on and so forth.
And tomorrow kicks off enrollment week at Freedom Project Academy. If you have a student in K-12, take a look at our fully accredited Judeo-Christian online school for next fall. Boy, we keep telling you about how bad public schools are. I realize it's not an option for everybody. Keeping your kids at home, away from the coronavirus, away from public school teachers and all their creepiness. This is not for everybody. We realize this, but this may just be for you. If you have the ability to keep your kids at home, safe, away from bullying and from drugs and from all the stupid sexuality that's going on in the classrooms, we'll give them a really good education right through the computer. We will, I know Katie hates this, we will beam live teachers into your living room, and they will teach your kids in real time. We do all the grading, we do all the assignments, and you can get a transcript, an actual degree from us, high school diploma, that's useful in any college anywhere in the country. And many of our Freedom Project Academy kids are going off to college because they want to, not because they feel like they need to. So if you're interested in that, request a free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomfromschool.com. Freedom for School. See my Freudian slip? It is. It's freedom from school. But to get your packet, freedomforschool.com. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay away from public schools, my friends.